Hello and welcome to the In Gaming Podcast, where I, Hardiment, along with my good friend and co-host DestinoWill, talk all things video games. You can catch us at 7 p.m. GMT every Tuesday here on YouTube with a brand new episode. We love to hear from our listeners, so please give us a shout with any questions, feedback, or suggestions, either in the comments section below or over on Twitter at In Gaming Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to like and subscribe and share the podcast. And without further ado, let's take a look at what's been going on this week in gaming. So, over the past week, I've been putting a lot of time into Gran Turismo 7, the newest title in the Gran Turismo series. And I'm just going to talk a bit about it today. Just go into some of my thoughts on the career mode now that I've finished it. And then also just the kind of wider game in general, especially in comparison to GT Sport. So, like I say, a finished career mode that took about, I think, 22 to 23 hours of in-game time. So that is 23 hours flicking through menus, clicking on races, doing the tuning, buying different parts for the different cars, tuning them up to the correct performance rating, things like that, and then 8 hours around about of actual racing. So that's 8 hours of on track racing. So that's not too bad in terms of kind of a length for a Gran Turismo game, but like I'll come on to when I talk of maybe some of the criticisms, it does feel as though for a game series built around longevity, I have come to the end of kind of their proactive, almost their proactive career mode only a week into the game's release. So the career mode is centered around these menu books. These menu books are a series of different kind of collector missions whereby you are given a task or a series of cars to collect. So this could be within a category, could be rally cars, could be Ferraris, things like that. And the aim throughout this kind of menu book mission structure is that you go out and you win races, win championships in order to progress through the menu books. Now, on the surface, I've kind of really enjoyed this aspect because it's felt a bit more focused than maybe previous Gran Turismos, whereby you're kind of left to your own devices, and then career mode goes as quickly or as slowly as you are able to rack up cash or kind of win races, whatever it might be. Whereas the menu book has felt a bit more like maybe not hand holding, because that can be normally used in kind of a pejorative context. It's not necessarily that they're leading you all the way through this, but what it is giving you a set of tasks to achieve in order to kind of carry on. Now, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed kind of using some cars that maybe I otherwise don't use in kind of racing games, taking on different tasks that I might otherwise not kind of pursue in other racing games. Personally, I'm very much a kind of Formula One and GT3, which is kind of the some of the upper levels of GT racing, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Aston Martins, things like that. Whereas going through the career mode, you're obviously going to be using kind of small hot hatches, small Japanese compact cars. So at the start, you're kind of working through this quite slowly. You're not jumping straight into kind of a high performance vehicle like you might do in Forza Horizon or the Forza games, where they're almost given out kind of ad nauseum. You are just constantly handed new high performing vehicles to take them on the track, and you never feel like perhaps you kind of work and start your way up from the ground level. So that was fun, but some of maybe the criticism that I have around the career mode is that it's a case of when it stops, you you don't really have you don't have any direction other than your own direction to kind of go forward. Once you've finished all the menu books, which, like I said, has taken about 22 to 23 hours, you've only got license tests and missions in order to keep the game rolling forward. But those aren't focused around a specific type of vehicle or, a specific set of kind of wider goals. They're more, self contained experiences whereby you need to overtake a number of cars in a short space of time in order to complete the mission. Or you've obviously got the license tests, which might be learning how to corner, learning how to brake properly. So it feels as though I've come to the end of the career aspect, and the only thing pushing me forward now is from a completionist perspective, going through the different races on different tracks in order to tick them off the list, rather than it being, I'm going to start at a very slow compact car, I'm going to work my way up the whole way until I'm at the pinnacle of motorsport. That hasn't really happened in the course of the career mode. You start with a compact car, but you don't end at kind of the pinnacle of racing. You very much end on the final championship, and kind of that's it. Now go and do what you want, which I'm sure some people do enjoy and some people like about those games. But it feels like the career mode is good, but there just wasn't enough scope. And maybe it is something that they're going to bring in future, more menu books. So it could be when they when they release DLC cars, they could release that alongside another menu book, which I think would be an interesting, way to keep that experience going. But all of this, I might have some criticisms, but all of this is to say that I have still really enjoyed it. It's still been a really fun career experience, and it certainly is miles better than the experience you had with GT Sport as far as single player went. One other thing that I would probably say is that there's less kind of league racing in this game. So you might have a number of championships that are kind of landmarks within the career mode. But outside of those championships, there's maybe 9 or 10 of them. There's no other set leagues. So, one where you might race at Brands Hatch and then Daytona, and then the Nürburgring. There's those. They might exist in terms of there might be a Sunday Club 600 or what have you that are across a few different tracks, but they're not interconnected. So it's not a case of I can go on and say, right, I want to do a 4-league race where there's points involved. It's a championship. It's a case of there might be the Sunday Club 600 or Clubman 600 across 3 different racetracks, but you have to go to them separately, and the points aren't carried over across the 3 of them. It's not like you're racing in a championship. So if there was a way for me to make my own championships, that would maybe overcome some of that. But what it means is that there's a lot of kind of sparseness, despite there being quite a number of tracks, 34, 35, I think. There's maybe a sparseness to the racing after you've finished the career mode, because you're kind of expected to just go and tick these kind of races off the list. I've got another couple of things that I'll get to, but given that I'm a massive kind of car guy, massive motorsport guy, how have you found it coming from, maybe a perspective of somebody who isn't as invested in kind of Formula One or GT racing? How have you found that experience as not an outsider, but you know what I mean, somebody who's maybe not completely, engaged in car culture?
Okay, so just just straight off, I'll just say I've not played anywhere near as much as you have in the first week here, but a fair bit. It's been very like welcoming and accessible to someone who's not typically a racing game player. Um, I mean, it might feel a bit like you say handholdy to someone who's a hardcore racing game player, but I've appreciated the way it takes you through each thing. Um, I found I did the first of the licenses, and I found like they were genuinely good in that I was a better at driving the cars after I'd done them. Whereas I usually find like tutorial or training modes in games to be kind of boring and pointless because usually you can just figure stuff out as you go along. But like I actually thought it was really good. And we'll continue to do them. I like. I think okay. I didn't really know how long the campaign was until you just said. But I think for me, the thing I'll be once I've done it, the thing I'll be focusing on is just collecting the cars. I think that's just kind of a nice thing. Um, Probably less so than trying to get like the gold on all the races and stuff. Probably more like the collection of the cards. I think that's what will appeal to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one thing that's very true. Is the license tests are kind of really good at improving your skill as a Gran Turismo player within the context of the game.
Yeah.
The within the physics of the game and how the cars function within it. And it's not just about, I guess, one thing that extends the longevity of the license tests is that it's not just about getting gold. It's about the competitive aspect between, people on your friends list who also are, doing these license races. I've been going back on them, seeing I've been beat by, kind of somebody on my friends list, and going, right, now I'm going to go and one up them
You want the
because
best.
I want to maintain, that kind of peak performance and the number one spot. So that does help in increase the longevity as well. How have you found? Um, I don't know whether kind of what assists you use, or whether whether there's anything that within the game that you found particularly helpful when getting to grips with something that's more maybe
Mm.
circuit based, more simcade as
So
opposed to kind of a Forza game.
so initially I had I don't think I actually realised left it turned on, but the kind of auto brake on. So I turned that off after a couple of races. I still have the it shows like the red chunk of track. It tells you when to brake.
Oh yes, yeah, the
But
braking, yeah, zone.
after like doing the most recent, after finishing the licensing, I think I'm going to turn that off next time I play.
All right.
I think I'm comfortable enough to get around the corners myself without spinning out,
Yeah.
which is always good. Um, yeah, there's lots of options, and it's not just a case of an easy, normal, and hard mode. You can turn every assist or everything on or off, or change the level. So it's really quite what's the word? You can It's not the word. You can adapt it to your
Yeah.
your tastes, your ability, whatever.
Yeah.
So you can it can be if you want it to be, it can be a very like chilled, relaxing driving simulator. If you want it to be as challenging as possible, you can whack everything up.
Yeah. And of
Yes,
course that
good.
that some of that comes into play when you're using a racing wheel, for instance. If you're using a racing
Yes,
wheel, then you're going to want the more simulated experience with maybe the counter steering turned off or the traction control down or ABS, whatever it might be, so that your inputs on a wheel are as kind of close as to real life as possible. But then on a gamepad, maybe it's a bit different. Some of those accessibility options kind of improve the experience. I would say that another element, like with the Forza games, the Forza games almost incentivize you to improve your skill as a driver by offering kind of percentage increases on credits.
Okay.
For turning the difficulty of the kind of enemy. I was going to say enemy drivers.
Yeah,
That sounds quite malicious. The other drivers in races, if you turn that difficulty up, if you switch to manual, if you turn off traction control, you get an increase in credits. And to an extent, it would be maybe a kind of good feature if they wanted to incentivize you to kind of get a bit more technical with the driving, to kind of maybe give you a percentage increase on the credits for that. But
you could argue that that's then punishing the people who don't want to.
Yes, yeah. I
Like
suppose
making
it's
longer and
it's a balance. I suppose ultimately, given that it's a single player game, unless you go into the GT Sport mode, I suppose the way that Forza might argue that is that it's not a significant increase to completely hamper somebody's game if they, for instance, don't use those credit increases. It might be an extra 3,000 credits here or there on a large number already. So that they might argue that away by saying, look, somebody who has the assists off isn't going to get through the game twice as fast. They might be able to buy cars maybe 5% quicker than somebody who doesn't use them. And I suppose with GT, it's being more of a simcade, more of a kind of sim focused art, but with some elements of arcade in there. Then perhaps they want to strike a kind of better balance. Whereas with Forza, I do think that even if you switch all of the assists off, you can just hammer it, and oftentimes you'll do well. You'll do well enough in the career mode to progress. One other thing, and this is going to maybe be something that is specific to me. Well, maybe not specific to me, but specific to people who enjoy kind of racing games, as a kind of large part of their collection of video games that they play. Rolling starts, they need to go, and I don't know why they're still here. So rolling starts in the game being that there is a long train of cars ahead of you, you start at the back, and it essentially makes some of the races feel like overtake challenges rather than actual races. So I'm tasked with overtaking 19 other cars rather than tasked with qualifying or and then being put in a race and then going from where I qualified. Obviously, to have to qualify every single time you do a race in the game, do like a one lap quali, would add a significant chunk of time over the course of the career, which some people might say is valid, is a valid aspect of a racing game to be able to qualify. But I at least think maybe
have a toggle.
Yeah, have a toggle.
Like qualifying rounds on or off. Like
if you want a rolling start, have you rolling start. That's not a problem. It's not an inherently bad thing with a rolling start. The bad thing for me is the lack of option to switch to a grid start, because I like to get on the grid, manage the clutch, launch, see what moves I can make in the early moments of the game. Whereas it feels like if you're here and then the front of the pack is down here, you're essentially now having to weave in and out of cars to get ahead of them, rather than making good moves at the start of a race to kind of get ahead. There are grid starts on some of the races that, it's maybe more the career aspect that I wish I could have a toggle. So it's worth saying that after I finish the campaign, I still have about 350 cars to buy. So I've only
Oh, okay.
collected about 75 of them out of the 424, 5 odd cars in the game. So there's still a significant amount to get done in this game. Obviously, all the license tests, all the missions, knocking off um, all of the races for um, each of the tracks, and then I think there's I haven't come to it yet, but I'm pretty sure there's endurance racing as well, which is obviously something that you be dedicating a lot more time to than just a single race. Um, so there's still lots to do. It's just about uh, the fact that I think maybe there could be kind of menu book light elements after the campaign. So I'd like to see, maybe Ferrari championships, Lamborghini championships, whatever they might be within the game, that reward cars, reward a Lamborghini or a Ferrari in order to kind of
Mm.
help you along that path of collecting all of the cars. Um, I don't know what the maths would be in terms of the amount of credits it will cost in order to buy everything in the game. I've only after 22, 23 hours got to the point of having 1 million credits in my account. So I'd earned, obviously, I think I've earned maybe 3 million, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
having to spend money on tuning, on liveries, on wings, on all sorts, whatever it might be. So it took me that long to get to just 1 million credits, and some of these legend cars, which are more of the classic limited time vehicles, are worth 3.5 million, 4 million. So there's obviously a lot of credits to get, a lot of cars to get. Um, and I've really enjoyed it. I think maybe kind of it might sound as if there's some gripes I have with it, but I think those are gripes that I've had with the Gran Turismo series since I first started playing it. A lot of these have never, they've never moved on, like the rolling starts.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it's just that's what Gran Turismo is, and I can have those criticisms, but it's very unlikely that that's going to change because they've built that formula and it's obviously a winning formula. Um, so there's still loads to do. Um, what are there any aspects to it that you've really enjoyed? Any cars you've used? Any tracks you've been on that kind of
Um,
stand out?
Probably like so something that I've really enjoyed, which isn't really specifically in the game, I guess, is actually the controller and in particular the adaptive triggers,
Yeah,
which of course simulate the accelerator and brake pedals, and the way in which that so far I don't know the extent of it, but I believe like how much resistance is on the pedal slash trigger is influenced, it seems, by track, car, whether it's on an incline, and probably tire as well. It seemed, I could did the same race for the same car and swapped the tires out, and then I was pushing that a bit harder.
yeah.
It's so a lot of them is so subtle, but it is noticeable, and it makes it really feel like you have changed your car or you are on a different track. Like,
Yeah, yeah, which is something that racing wheels have an easier time with than
of
controllers. So it's
course,
I'd say I have a sim, set up, but it's Xbox and PC based, so I had to play this with control, and I have to say, given though I've not played a racing game with a controller in a sim racing game with a controller in a while, it has been really enjoyable. Certainly given the finger a bit of a workout when you're pushing hard on on the triggers. But I think the nuances, that's one thing that a racing wheel does really well, is the nuances in track feel, in the curbs. So when you've got a racing wheel, and you ride curbs, the wheel, the wheel's kind of going up and down to compensate, to make you feel as though the wheels are going like,
Right.
kind of up and down. And I
Hmm.
felt like they did a really good job with with curb feel in the controller, that kind of stop start of vibration as you roll over the controller, but that it's that it has its own location within the controller. So obviously if you're on a steering wheel and you're riding a curb, your left wheels are riding over a curb, then you can feel the distinction between the fact that you're not just riding over a curb that covers the whole bottom of the car. You're actually, only one set of wheels are on the curb, and they manage to have kind of specific locations in the controller where vibration would occur. So if your left wheels are rolling over the curb, you feel it on the left hand side of the controller. So that adds to kind of the immersive aspect, by it not just throwing a bunch of random vibrations at you and there's no distinction. So that I really enjoyed, and there's loads to come. And one thing that it for me especially, given that this is going to be it's a long term Gran Turismo game. There's going to be a lot more cars coming, a lot more tracks coming. I specifically would love to see some UK tracks like Alton Park and Silverstone, things like that. So there's loads of room for that, for those tracks to come into the game. For me, I'm gonna use it with a wheel. I'm gonna get a wheel,
Yeah.
eventually, or converter or whatever, however I can make it work with the wheel on the PlayStation. Um, to be able to play it. And at that point, I'll probably tackle GT Sport more, the online mode, maybe take on the manufacturer championship in the online mode, which helps keep the game going over time. So I might have finished the career mode, but there's obviously still a lot to do, and it looks and sounds amazing. The level of detail is phenomenal. Um, I've
I have
spent a
to
load of
say,
time in Scapes as well.
I have a single, very small complaint.
Okay.
Is that so? Obviously, it's stunning. The cars look amazing, especially when the sun's shining on them. The tracks look great and everything. Shadows, brilliant. But I mean, it doesn't. You don't notice it much because obviously, when you're driving, much like when you're driving in real life, you got to look at the road. Uh, but every so often, I catch a glimpse of when there's like people hanging
All right.
out.
Yeah.
And they're very not detailed,
Yes.
and it's kind of jarring compared to everything else, which looks incredible.
Yeah. I definitely, I can see that. One thing, I will say on, people have never looked good in racing games. It's
No,
always obviously the last thing that a racing game developer focuses on. But while the crowds might look a little jank, I have to say the marshals, the trackside people, actually are pretty decently detailed. I mean, I just stopped. I was just in the middle of a race and just came to a stop, and just looking at the marshal on the side of the track. The character model of that is actually quite detailed by comparison. But it's the crowds that look like. I mean, they're obviously hoping that you're flying past 120 miles an hour, that you don't notice
yeah, exactly.
you don't notice how maybe they've got 10 polygons and a really really rough texture over it. But yeah, I definitely agree on that front. And I'm
But
not sure we'll
it's a
ever see.
small thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll ever see a racing game that is able to do kind of characters with any justice, because it's not just about the fact that they're a low priority in terms of the amount of polygons within a scene that they can that they can possess. Obviously, in a racing game, you've got maybe however many times the polygons on a car that you might have in any other video game where there's a car in it. So the characters take a low priority, but it almost reminds me of maybe Total War. It's a weird comparison, but in Total War, the individual characters within the real time battles look good, but
Yeah.
in the CGI they don't look so good. They actually look quite bad in the CGI. But that's because the talent and the focus of the team is focused on different goals. And I think it's the same. You could take
Yeah, of course.
I think the art and development team um are so good at doing cars that they just maybe have not, never got round
Yeah.
to bothering
Like I
with the
said,
people.
the majority of the time, your eyes are on the car or the
Yeah,
road.
yeah, that's true.
It's very occasional, but
But
you
I mean, it's
you
one thing
drift
that
to the
people.
side. Hmm.
It's a one thing that people bring up because all of it contributes towards immersion, doesn't it? So,
Yes, that's true.
so it's got to be taken into account, or given kind of some time. One other last thing before we round it up: there's no selling. Now, they did say prior to the release of the game that you would be able to sell cars,
Okay.
either in maybe an auction house sort of scenario, or just sell them outright to used car dealerships, things like that. But you can't, which means the only way to get credits to buy other cars is to race or to buy them through the PlayStation Store.
Yeah.
Now that's one thing that some people have complained about. Now I understand the kind of complaint. The only thing that I would say that maybe backs up kind of backs up how they've approached it and their attitude is that this is a car collection game. Now I know that people's collections, you take cars and you sell cars if you've got a collection in real life, but ultimately you don't want, if you're going after collecting every car, if you are selling cars at every opportunity in order to buy more, then reasonably they leave your collection. So the
Yeah.
fact that you can only you can only earn credits through racing means that you are building out the full collection of cars rather than a full collection of just the cars that you specifically want.
That's yeah.
Which is why I don't think selling is in the game. They don't want you to have bought 50 cars and then sell 20 of them, and now you've not got 2/5 of the collection that you had. Because then what do they still tell you you've got do they still tell you you've got that car? Do they give you all the information on that car that you've now sold? I think that's where I see their kind of their approach, their methodology when it comes to not selling cars. But that might come in future. So it's not a given that it will never appear. I'd say that pretty much covers my opinions. There's obviously lots more to be played, and I'll hopefully get a PlayStation wheel at some point to be able to play it
Yeah.
online, things like that. Add to the longevity. So anything else that kind of has stood out, or you just wanting to kind of crack on and see where it goes?
No, yeah, that's it. I just need to put a bit more time into it. It is good in that you can just blast a few races if you've only got like an hour or two spare.
Yeah.
You can get through quite a bit in that time. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And as you said earlier, like I'm not usually like the only racing game I normally play is like Mario Kart. So it's quite the opposite end of
the spectrum.
like yeah. um, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm learning lots as well. I don't know a great deal about cars, motor vehicles in general, and there's plenty of like I want to say lore. It's probably not the right word, but yeah, every car or every manufacturer, every track, there's a bit of history. There's some information.
Yeah,
I'm learning. I go to the tuning shop and I'm actually learning what these parts of cars are for in real life. Like,
yes, yeah.
I may know of these parts, but never really know how they work. I've never had to tune a car before or fix a car or anything like. So yeah, it's been quite good.
Now you know that you could pop into a car workshop and get started on tuning high powered vehicles. But yeah, that's one thing that they've always been really good at, is giving you the history, giving you the background to these cars, giving you an incentive to kind of go after them and collect them and understand them more. That's what they want you. This is a car game, not just for people who are already passionate about cars, but people who want to know more. People, they want to bring more people into the fold of people who are kind of passionate about not just racing, but just cars in general, and how we got here and where we're going in terms of kind of vehicles production.
I think it
vehicles
says a lot for what's gone into this game, that we are both being at opposite ends of like car interests.
Yeah,
we're both very much enjoying this game, maybe slightly different reasons.
Yeah,
but we're both equally enjoying it.
Yeah,
so that's very good on their part for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to lots more DLC and tracks, cars, that sort of thing coming down the line, which I'm sure it will do for a good few years yet. Right. That being said, I think that wraps up everything we want to talk about on Gran Turismo, so we'll move on to the next topic.
So this week I have been playing WWE 2K22. I wasn't originally not going to pick it up until I saw the reviews popping out saying that it's actually pretty good. To return to form, which the series has needed for probably about a decade at this point. A quick sort of, anyone not familiar with the history of the series, in the last, so I think it was 2013, 2K took the license from THQ. And like halfway through the year, so they basically just took over development and just put out the game, which was already halfway developed already. And then because it was a yearly release, they just kind of built on that. But what happened was it was just getting very muddled because they were building on existing systems. And what happened? Eventually, it got to 2K19, which released in the latter half of 2018. And that actually was pretty good. It seemed like they're finally starting to refine some stuff. Like they might be getting their own stamp on the series. And then 2K20 came out and was notoriously terrible. To the point where they said, right, we need more time. They just skipped a year. 2K20 came out. Most people picked it up when this is terrible, and just went back to playing 2K19, which led to them actually leaving the 19 servers open longer than they would have done, because everybody was playing that still. It was a glitchy mess, and they had no intention of fixing it, basically. They skipped 21 straight to 22, which would have come out November last year, but they then delayed it further to March just to get the finishing touches in. So what you have is a game now where they've completely remade the fundamentals of how the actual combat works. Simpler. It's a bit more arcadey. So there's before it'd be a case of you'd initiate a grapple, then you'd wait a few seconds, and then you'd push a button and then a direction to do a certain move, and then every button and every stick direction combined with it would do a different thing. That kind of still happens, but they've changed the way you set it up, in that there's light and heavy strikes, which is more of a like traditional fighting game thing. And and there's a lot of combos, so just very simple ones, like square, square, X kind of thing. But they'll link together, and then at the end of it, depending on which button you hit at the end, it'll do a different kind of cool move. And it's just a lot more fun. And I think it's a lot easier for someone who's never played or not played one of these games for a long time. You could just jump in and play it with your mate. You could just enjoy it straight away.
Yeah.
The UI is much simpler. Like, it got to the point where there was like 3 or 4 layers of health bars and 2 layers of stamina bars plus a reversal bar, and it was like it's getting very convoluted, and they've just massively stripped it down. Now it's really simple. You just got your health, you've got a bar over your health, so when you've got like an energy bar over your health, and when that runs down, you take permanent health damage. Because that top bar will refill after you rest or get, and then you've just got a bar which fills up to earn your finishing moves, and that's pretty much it. But it just feels a lot nicer. It's more arcadey, yet somehow feels more real. I don't really know how they've made that, but it's good. And there's a lot of modes. A lot of them are the kind of mode you always had in these games, like the creation modes. You can make your own wrestlers, make your own rings, I'm not sure if the creator moves in this one, actually. That's create championship belts, things like that, and all of which can be uploaded and shared online. You can also go online, and there's thousands of creations by other players. Some people are incredibly good at creating like accurate versions of real life people who aren't necessarily in the game. Which kind of brings me to probably one of the, depending on how you look at it, it's a negative, is that because of all the delays, the roster is actually somewhat outdated. I think there's something like 40-something guys in the game it's their first time in a game, and about 30 of those people have now been released from their contracts and no longer work for the company. So in a way, it's kind of good because it may be the only chance you ever get to have these characters in a game, which is kind of how I'm approaching it. And for the record, I've not actually watched a WWE show in probably over a year, so the up-to-dateness of the roster doesn't actually mean that much of a difference to me. Yeah. And there's a good selection of like legend wrestlers, like your Hulk Hogan's and the Rock, those kind of guys. They're all in there as well. It's a lot of fun. I won't go on too much about the different modes, though, because I've not really had much time to get too far into them. What I would like to talk about briefly is the soundtrack, which the last few times I've picked up one of these games, I've not enjoyed the soundtracks. They've been pretty terrible. Maybe one song I like, and the rest are all really bad. There's not a huge soundtrack. I think it's 12 tracks. And I saw that they had enlisted Machine Gun Kelly to curate the soundtrack.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was like, not massively into his stuff at the moment, but I'll see how it goes. It may have decent days. So predictably, he's curated 2 of his own songs, which is fine. Yeah, that's probably part of his deal. But there are also tracks by. So I'll just run through some of the artists. There's Wu-Tang Clan, Motorhead, Poppy, Royal Blood, Bring Me the Horizon, Asking Alexandria, and Turnstile. So it's quite a big.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that stand out to me. There's a few others as well, and also a few which I've not heard of because they're presumably new and for young people.
Go on. Let me see.
Yeah, it's quite. Where do we go? So the song, all one word, Kenny Hoopla.
I've heard the name. Yeah, don't.
To be fair, this track he's got on here is featuring Travis Barker, who obviously I do know.
Yes, I think he's part of that. New wave.
There's someone called Bad Bunny as well, who I believe is I'm not sure which country exactly, but a Hispanic rapping kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
Weird thing about Machine Gun Kelly's involvement is Machine Gun Kelly is also going to be a playable character in one of the DLC packs.
Oh, really?
So if you do dislike him, you can just purchase him,
And then
so you can
him.
beat the shit out of him and make him bleed everywhere. So that's
there you go.
that's,
so for everybody, it's fun for the whole family.
for everybody. But, yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. Normally, I get excited by these games and then go, actually, it's the same as all the other ones. I'm kind of bored, but actually looking forward to playing more, which is always good.
I've heard that it was the return to, like you say, the return to form that the franchise needed, and that the break was a very welcome.
Now, the upsetting thing, not about this game in particular, about our series, is before it came out, and I'm hoping if this is true, it might change now. It's got a good reception. Is that apparently WWE were shopping the license around potentially to EA?
Oh, okay.
So,
I mean, they do the EA do the UFC games, and then
yes,
they've done
they do
the Fight Night games in the past, which have been fairly well received, if I remember.
The UFC games are quite good, but if you go on, find any online community such as the Reddit for the UFC games, you'll find that with each entry of the game, the community hates it more than the previous one, and they absolutely blame EA for it every time. So,
well, EA have the EA now own Codemasters, who do the Formula One games. So,
Codemasters did they do the Dirt games as well?
Yeah, they do.
Because I know they did this is going off topic slightly, but is Dirt like the spiritual successor from the Colin McRae rally games?
Yeah, you had the Colin McRae games, and then Colin McRae Dirt, and then
and then it became Dirt,
and then it became Dirt. Obviously, once Colin kind of passed away in the helicopter accident, they slowly shifted kind of the name away from Colin McRae. But yeah, for it was Colin McRae rally. And,
I know we're no longer in the racing game portion, but honestly, I do actually really enjoy Dirt 5. It's a very good. It's very good, especially the PS5 version. It's really good.
No, I did. That was one of the free games of the month, wasn't it, for PS Plus?
It was, yes.
I haven't played all that much of it. I've played a lot of Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2, which is the hardcore sim version of the Dirt series. You've got Dirt 5, which is the more kind of arcade, more casual focused, and then you've got the Dirt Rally series, which is their all-out punishing rally simulator. Okay. And they both have their place. Dirt, I've always loved the Dirt series. But yeah, going off topic. I mean, yeah, like I say, it looked like, judging from the review that I saw, it looked like it desperately needed the break, and that it was a really good. It was really good for them to take that time out. I think it is maybe a sign to, let's say, Activision, that maybe Call of Duty taking a year out would be a good decision, and that sometimes maybe that's what it needs, is not, because it's not just from a developer perspective. With WWE, the games have always, since, like you say, 2013, been developed by 2K, and they're kind of the same team working on it, whereas Call of Duty have 3 teams working in rotation. But just almost from a, like a cultural aspect, I'm trying to think of the kind of correct way to think about it, but for the franchise to take a break is good for the players as well, just to kind of, experience one game for longer than maybe they have before. But also just taking just resetting for everybody, for the developer, for the audience, to come back to the series and say, look, now this is kind of, they've had more time, we've had some time away, now we're in a good place.
What would be good is if it was every 2, maybe even 3 years, so they can genuinely change and overhaul things more, instead of just doing a slightly different version of the same game. So it's it's worth paying full price again, because it's a better game. Yeah. They've done something to it. So there's that, and then I think people who play games like this, these like yearly releases, fit into one of 2 categories, which is they'll play it for a couple of months and probably move on, or they'll play it religiously the entire year.
Yeah.
And I think the people who play it religiously, it'd be just as well to release a second year's worth of DLC, because some of the years it is essentially it's the same game with a roster upgrade, like update. Sorry, so you could just release DLC packs throughout the year, which total the cost of buying
a
new game.
Yeah,
or probably come to more overall, and so presumably could make like similar amount of money.
Yeah, and from a development perspective, it makes a lot more sense to, rather than moving developers onto a new game, put sometimes a new version of an engine, to kind of focus on creating this. Instead, say, right, let's release this game, and I think people are more willing to take a base game and then play it for a longer period of time.
Yeah,
We don't need a new one every year. Like, like Destiny as an example, we're happy for Destiny 2 to be the base game that the expansions are built upon, rather than going to a Destiny 3, having to dial back some of the progress that was made with Destiny 2 because that's how game development works, and then plow forward. I think maybe it'd be a good idea to, if WWE 2K22 is a good game, then hold on to it. There's no reason to throw away all that effort that quickly. And I think one thing that maybe proves that, coming back to Call of Duty, is the longevity of Modern Warfare. The kind of newest one, Modern Warfare 2019, I think it was. That game was so well received that even when Black Ops Cold War came out, people were still playing Modern Warfare because they were happy to have Modern Warfare as a base game and have more content come out for it. So I think that's what they need to do, and I think the year out for the WWE series should serve as a message to other developers that it's okay to take a break. You might not suppose it. When it comes down to its financing, but I can't see a situation where financing a whole new game is more cost effective than financing DLC for.
Yeah, they might take a short term hit to sales profits, but if then the time goes into the next entry being significantly better and presumably then selling better, then it's got to be worth it. Plus, this is a time where I feel like every developer and publisher could do as much like good press as they can get.
Yeah.
So
build that brand.
Putting out a good game is
exactly.
Yeah,
I think brand loyalty has never been more important than now, because people are, the gaming community is not willing anymore to take bad practice, rushed games. I think you just have to look at the backlash to 2042 and realize that if they kept that in the oven for another year and released the game that they were meant to, they wouldn't be having to backpedal and win back people who are not going to come back to that game. It happened with Battlefield 4 and we let it slide. We said, right, Battlefield 4 is such a good game that we'll forget the past.
The assumption is that if this kind of situation occurs, that the company will learn from the mistake and not repeat it.
Yeah, they always.
That's what you would assume.
It's almost like a situation where developers think that releasing a broken game to improve it based on public feedback that surrounds an outcry or really bad press is the way to develop a game.
I don't buy it at all.
Do more alpha and beta periods. Make the steps before the thing comes out to make it right and get player feedback. Don't wait until the game releases and then get player feedback after it and then go, right, we'll put in a scoreboard, or right, we'll take 2 years out and spend more time on developing this new title. So going forward, yeah, I hope to see that. But yeah, glad you've enjoyed it so far. I have not played a wrestling game, more than maybe 15, 20 minutes since SmackDown versus Raw 2004.
Mm.
So, but if it's any good, then I might check it out. And when the Machine Gun Kelly DLC comes out, when that drops, then
Um,
my hand might be forced to buy it. To
I
take him
believe
on
that same DLC will also include Logan Paul.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. I'm gonna have to get this
So
game. No,
just if you want to make someone bleed, then that's probably
well,
the option.
the two of the two of them duking it out would be fun. Right. Is there anything else on WWE that you wanna talk about?
No, that's it for now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've just been playing GT7, so I've not got much else to talk about. And I know that you've been playing a lot of WWE and Destiny, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week's coverage of what we've been playing. Um, Over the next few weeks, I am looking to possibly get Dying Light 2. I've been waiting a while, and I actually am fairly interested in playing a single player kind of narrative driven game. So that's on my horizon, as it were. So I'm sure I'll have lots to talk about if I do end up getting that. Um, but unless there's anything else you want to share for today.
Um, quickly, I've actually been playing the remake of The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on Switch.
Oh yes.
Just a little bit. It's if you've played the original back on the Game Boy, it's basically identical, but just looks a lot nicer, obviously, because it's not on a green screen and 2D. Well, it's kind of 2D, but not much to everything. It's nice, it's fun. Not anything changed.
I need to get back into playing some Switch, so I might put that on my list as well. And obviously, we had the Pokemon reveal as well. So
so
there's lots coming down the line for the Switch still. All these years later. But yeah, I think that's everything from my side. Then is that everything from you?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Brill. Well, thanks for joining us again this week. We will be back again next week at Tuesday, 7 p.m. GMT. If you did like the episode, do be sure to like and subscribe and share the podcast. And with that being said, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Goodbye.